As an artist, your goal is to create something unique. With that aim, it might seem logical to discard the past, to remove all external sources and create something without influence. But as the saying goes, if you do not study the past, you are doomed to repeat it. Applied to art, if you don't know what's come before, odds are you'll end up making something we've already seen. So instead of trying to make something brand new, invert the problem and avoid recreating what you know has come before. If you can do that, odds are you'll end up making something we've never seen.
The reason we see a lot of material we've seen before, kind of like cliche stuff, is because they're not aware of what's been done before. So part of your education as a writer is really to know what's been done before. So you really got to be very knowledgeable about, you have to be a geek about this, about knowing all the movies that have been done before and all the TV that's been done before and all the comic books that have been done before. So that you know when you create something, you try to avoid that and come up with something unique.
Great art follows rules defined by great art of the past. No matter your medium, whether it be storytelling with the hero's journey, music with the rule of 3, or design with the golden ratio, there are certain principles and structures you should adhere to. When you tell an artist that they have to follow rules, they have a tendency to writhe and scream like a vampire caught in the sunlight. But the truth is that constraints do not hamper creativity. They foster it, because great art also breaks the rules. You showcase your creativity not by creating without structure, but by doing something new within the confines of a familiar one. But the catch is you can't just break the rules at random. You have to do it with intent and purpose. In order to do that, you have to learn the rules so that you know when and why you're breaking them.
When it's there, it clicks. It's like, to give you an example, because it sounds reductive, right? It sounds like, oh, well, every story can't be the same, because that would be a very violent reduction of what you see to be a very vibrant world. But to give you some context, like every person that you've ever met has a consistent structure of a face, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And that consistency in the structure is what allows for expression. You've met 10,000 people in your life. You don't walk up to the 10,000th person you've met and go, you know what, I'm getting really bored of this facial construction that you're using here. Like, you just don't do that. It's a prerequisite for communication and for value expression. Those people that understand that will be able to harness that structure to express something meaningful. And ultimately, you can look at The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, Shawshank Redemption, Die Hard, Jerry Maguire. It doesn't matter. They all follow that pattern, and when they follow, it just clicks and we resonate with it.
The truth is, all the rules are is audience expectations. We've been telling stories for thousands of years, and over time, we've come to a societally accepted way for how those stories are told. As a matter of fact, proper story structure is more human nature than it is theory. Story structure wasn't invented by a professor in a classroom or by a screenwriter at a keyboard. It was discovered by a cultural anthropologist named Joseph Campbell. Joseph worked in comparative mythology. His job was to study and compare great myths and creation stories throughout history. And over time, he started to notice that regardless of time, place, or culture, all of these myths followed a similar narrative structure, which he named the monomyth, which is better known today as the hero's journey or the story circle. What this pattern shows us is that as human beings, encoded into our subconscious is how a great story is told. Your audience might not be able to articulate the monomyth, but they'll feel on a subconscious level when something deviates from the structure they're used to. Keep in mind, next time you want to break that structure, you're moving away from a storytelling method that has been accepted for millennia. Following this structure will not box you in creatively. There are infinite permutations for how it can manifest. Your job as an artist is not to find a way to create a new hero's journey. It's to take the existing hero's journey and use it in a way nobody has ever seen before. The key is to give the audience something new in a context they're familiar with. The thing with people is that deep down, they inherently hate change. They want something new, but not so new that it makes them uncomfortable. Therefore, when you present people with something that completely breaks the structure they're used to, something they have no reference for, they'll reject it. This is why you want to study the rules before you break them, because you want to do so in such a way that doesn't completely break the structure. By doing this, you can subvert audience expectations without straying too far from their comfort zone. The issue in the arts today is not enough people are studying the past, they're just imitating the present. Instead of taking inspiration from what has come before and creating something new with it, people are just copying what's working right now. Studying the past gives you a historical lens to look through and see what has always worked instead of what's just working in the current moment. It's better to learn timeless principles that will allow you to adapt as things change, as opposed to getting really good at a fleeting trend. You have to live with your art forever. Stop trying to only make it for right now.
everybody today, if you put on like alternative radio, the guitars sound exactly the same. You know, it's like, it's got to do with the lack of imagination that we're going through right now in certain areas of music. And kids think that they're supposed to copy things on television or on the internet, and that's how they're going to get successful. Well, the best way to be successful is to have it influence you or make up your own thing.
There's a misconception that studying the past is no longer applicable because the internet has changed things. While it's absolutely true that the internet has changed things, each digital medium, whether it be YouTube videos, podcasts, or blogs, all have a predecessor in the analog world. And within that analog world are relevant and valuable lessons you can bring into the digital world. When you study the past, you're not trying to recreate it, you're trying to build upon it. You don't want to start from square one. You want to figure out where those who came before you left off and start from there. You want to take all of the tools that you have at your disposal that previous generations didn't have and use them to take the next step and evolve the medium. You're not picking up the torch and walking back down a path that was already charted. You're picking up the torch and blazing a new trail. Let's be real though, there's going to be some wandering around in the darkness until you can find the torch. In order to make great art yourself, you have to understand what it takes to make great art. You'll learn that by mimicking the work of people who inspire you. This isn't the same thing as copying what's popular. It's imitating it of admiration and not envy. As you continue to grow as an artist, you'll start to combine your inspirations to create something unique. It will become even harder for people to pinpoint who you're referencing because it won't just be one person. Eventually, you'll get to a place where you start having your own ideas, and through studying your favorite artists, will have built up a skill set and understanding of how to bring those ideas to life.
When you start out, your shit's gonna sound like a combination of your 5 favorite people. Then you start to get better. Then you start to learn your own thing. Not everybody pops out of nowhere just completely original. Not everybody in here is gonna just day one make something that sounds like nothing else, with no reference point. You sound stupid holding yourself to the standard of the first thing I make needs to be revolutionary. You have to understand this. No chord change is unplayed. Like, no sequence of notes has never been done before. You're not about to invent a rhythm today or a polyrhythm that's gonna blow the world's mind, and they're gonna say, oh my God, no one's ever combined rhythms or notes this way. It's not gonna happen like that. The way it's gonna happen is your story, the context to who you are, where you're from, how you make music, all these different things. That's what makes it new. That's what makes it interesting. You gotta start somewhere. You gotta be able to learn how to make beats that sound like beats you like to get to a place where you can make beats that sound like something you haven't even thought of yet.
But how new and original can something be if it's inspired by previous work? The truth of the matter is there's no such thing as original. You don't live in a vacuum. You've come into contact with art throughout your entire life, and it will influence you both consciously and subconsciously. And that's okay. It doesn't make you any less talented or creative. Quentin Tarantino is one of the greatest living directors, and each of his films is a love letter to cinema. They're filled with references and homages to different movies, scenes, and genres. But he takes all of these influences and blends them together to create something brand new. That's the trick with influences. It's not to avoid them, it's to hide them so well that nobody even knows they're there.
Break the things that inspire you and mix them up until they're no longer recognizable. And then you've made something new. Because that's all creativity is. Like, all we're ever doing is taking inspiration and either breaking it or bending it or blending it with something other than what the original inspiration was. You cannot create something new. It's metaphysically not possible. No one creates new stuff. They just reimagine and recycle and reinvent. So just don't make your inspiration too visible.
Like great art, the past shows but doesn't tell. It will show you what's worked before, but it won't tell you what to make now. It will show you what people expect, but it won't tell you how to surprise them. And it will show you where others left off, but it won't tell you what comes next. That's for you to decide.
Ultimately, you have to put your own kind of emotional, philosophical, artistic stamp on anything you do.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you want to start studying the past, check out the Artwell podcast, where every single season we study the life of a different great artist to find lessons that are relevant for modern creatives.